All right, big round of applause for Angela. That's a lot. All right, we're gonna get rolling. We have two awesome presentations, and then we're gonna break for the C meeting. So let me and move friends, which is fine. So, and there was some skiing I did here in Canada. So. For the next 20 minutes or so, going to talk about building great product. I'm going to turn over there.
Right on.
Big round of applause.
So the title of this, Building a World-Class Product in 20 Minutes. We'll see if we can get it done. Hold on a second. Cool. So it's been a product perspective, kind of a culmination, actually, 3 of the top advertisements for 2007. But also kind of discipline in how to build a team and how to scale the team through this. The second one, after some time at Yahoo, we really looked at how can we actually take some of that consumer delight sensibility and put that in the business space. And again, we looked at really for a true north, kind of how to put collaboration in context. There's a bunch of products out there that were trying to build basically new places to work, but everyone was already in Office, everyone was already in Outlook, everyone already they're using folders. And so we really with Versely went out there and did the same thing. We went to look at how can we build really collaboration in context and make it an engaging experience. And that worked out really well in that our bet was very different than a lot of the big enterprises. In 2011, Cisco actually acquired us, but really the reinvention and rebuild of the entire Cisco Collab platform, which means all their voice, video messaging, as well as integration into hardware. So it's been a pretty big journey. So today, in 20 minutes, I want to keep this pretty interactive and really see if I can help pull out some questions, get you guys thinking about things of how you scale a team and keep it world-class through that whole process. Because it's one thing to build a good product, but as you grow a team and you start to scale, and with the last presentation, I think, heard some of the tidbits talking to people, and it really is about empowering other people. It gets harder and harder to do that. So throughout this, I'm going to stop and give you guys chances to ask some questions. So the challenge that I had really going from Versely into creating and building this organization and this team within Cisco is empathy. This is like understanding what their struggles are and being really clear for that. And then the last one, and this is you think everyone talks about data and how they're learning from data. It starts with the hypothesis that you're actually testing in naming those hypotheses and being really clear at what you're trying to achieve with the stuff you're iterating on. And so these have been the kind of the key areas, and if kind of a good read if you can. And it's just, and no one's perfect. The first area I want to really struggled that you're just going to keep turning, and the team isn't going to do well. And so, and this is something that as you scale and as you get engineers, managing engineers, it has to be down to each person. This is amplified when a big company like Cisco as you hire, because you're not hiring people as a startup or as a growing company, where it's kind of, you have that bar of either hiring or not. Sometimes you're giving people. You still have to go through that process with every person, or it won't become a world-class product, period. Because you're only going to be good as your weakest link. And that's something that I've just learned over and over again. So the big thing has been getting that true north across. The second thing is product design starts with engineering and design in a PM. It doesn't end with engineering. This is another big mistake. It could start in marketing. People have a good idea. Let's organize our ideas, get to the point where we can give it to engineering or design to come up with what it looks like. It's the inverse. You actually need to start. And in one company, day in, day out, do amazing things where you as a generalist could do pretty well and you'll learn, you could become a specialist, but that's not your job. And so it's really important. This is one of the biggest, I think, challenges I had through kind of my career has been kind of sitting back at one point. I remember I'd never recruited anyone outside of engineering. I'd always recruited great engineering teams. I'd never scaled a business. And once I kind of attacked that challenge, this became so true to me, where it's like learning, do I hire younger people who are less skilled that want to get mentored, that you really are building for the long term, or do you hire like kind of hired gun specialists that know a lot of what they're doing already, that in some cases, if you're a younger CEO, you're intimidated by this. You're like, why would they want to work for me? And so these are things that were really important, and as this became more embedded in my mind, we got a lot further. Silicon Valley product from creating really the team to build this product. So, open the door.
When you get to a point of having customers, many customers, and but you still have to innovate, your team's just not expanding quick enough.
Yep.
And all of a sudden you want to innovate, but you've got features and support and bugs. And do you have any advice or ideas on how do you keep that innovation part alive and versus just managing it?
So I'll use people and show a lot of the times looking at and making that you do have a group that's in the enterprise. But it's going to be in the product period. Planning within the product to roll stuff out and cohorting. And there's a lot of tools. So Will Aldrich at SurveyMonkey, these guys are incredible at some of this stuff, is better designing the engineering team to understand how to slowly roll out and test stuff where you don't necessarily have to roll it out to the full audience. And then you have less exposure, confusion, and the overhead of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. It's just a difficult point.
It is, yeah. It's the key tenet is making sure you're separating it out so they don't feel all responsible for the full business.
You had a design starts with a designer, engineer, designer, PM.
Yep.
PM's product manager, project.
Really, it's product manager, and the definition, and this is what their job is communication facilitation. It's not, the project management should lie within engineering manager, Scrum lead. You don't want a PM dictating what engineers are doing.
Zero.
Mhm.
Some of us are hiring to
Yeah.
Zero or something like that.
Yep.
How would you stagger that stuff in? Is it based on your own skills? So if I can play PM, then I can
Most for newer companies, the CEO should be PM. With JumpCut, we brought in a PM who was awesome, but fundamentally probably could have lived without that for a while longer, and invested more into engineering. Cool. One of the things is as you get tends to be a number.
Do market research to figure out what to build. We originally did it off of customer interviews. We actually found customers aren't very good at specifying what they're willing to pay money for later.
Yeah, it's. That's getting into as I'm working with a lot of the startups I advise or invest in. It's looking for existing transactions, money flow going on in the marketplace, and so because if you ask the customer what are you willing to pay for, it's easier to say what do you already pay for, and that gets you at least a doorway in. In terms of them giving because I've seen actually some customers have 100-line spreadsheets, 500-line spreadsheets. A lot of those are just features, and they're just kind of recalling and looking at memory. If you can get in there, and this is the art of customer development in my mind, which is what are they struggling to get done? Like, for example, do an unnamed company that was looking at our product, and they had a system they were using that they had given us a 50-line feature request from. They said, if you do these 50 things, we'll use your product. So I got on the phone with them, talked to them for about an hour, and lo and behold, the biggest complaint about their product, and the reason they wanted to be off it, was the fact that it was a separate product from the one they used before in the workflow. Okay. It had nothing to do with the actual product itself. And that's why we got a list of things that was the product they already had. It would have been a waste of time. So once we understood that struggle, we started to figure out, okay, cool, how could we actually bleed the workflow and make the workflow better? And that connected the dots. So it's a challenge where you can't just assume that you're just fixing one little piece. You have to look at the full workflow, because business is workflow, right?
Okay. Thank you.
Cool.
When you're hiring your first PM, would you go outside to find an experienced one, or grow someone within the team that understands?
I grew one within our team in the last experience, and then went out and hired after that. And I think the maturity of the product will dictate that. So if you're growing very, very fast, and you're over your head in terms of how to do PM at a fast kind of scaled level, finding someone who's passionate about the true north. You can't do a hired gun. If you can find that person at that point, it's good. If the product's growing good, but you're not overwhelmed, definitely training someone up is, in my opinion, kind of longer lasting, because that person's going to be a lot more loyal.
What if the industry is extremely new and the new product manager doesn't know anything about it?
I mean, that's, first of all, if you look at your own role for this, are you overwhelmed on doing the product piece? Okay. So do you feel like you have better knowledge than anyone you could bring in externally? So do you want to teach the person, or do you want that person to do it?
That's the question.
It comes down to just, this is, as you scale the product, it's the thing that's taking you the most amount of time in your day that you can get rid of for the least amount of money. It's a pretty simple way to scale yourself. So if you can get rid of that, if that's the most amount of your time and the least amount of money, hire the more skilled PM. If there's other things on your plate that you can get rid of, so you have more time to incubate it yourself because you think you have better value there, then do that.
Can you talk about product marketing and product management? And
Okay, yeah.
what's the difference in startups and usually?
Yep. So we've actually been exploring this a lot. The way that we've talked about it internally ourselves has been product marketing is really customer development and figuring out what the customers need, and that's a key tenet of product management. I mean, even though it's product marketing. And then on the flip side, really product management at the end of the day is telling or showing customers what they're actually going to get. So it's kind of need versus get. A company to look at Atlassian has probably some of the best product marketers I've seen. They really haven't had to build a sales team. And those guys, we actually launched a product on them back in 2008, so I've seen them intimately grow up, Mike and Scott. And they've, by far, when it comes to product marketing, are the best example I've seen, especially because it's in the enterprise space and they're continuing to grow like crazy. Cool. Other questions?
One last question.
Right on. Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Eric. Everyone. Laura's going to moderate our next session. Also, former co-chair of C100 guy behind a lot of what we're involved in today. So good guys know. And I will let Lars take it away. Over to you.
I guess welcome. We're going to talk a little bit about the role of a CFO, the role of finance. I think we'll wander a little bit into growth strategies and so on. Mark gave a nice little background of myself. I'm an early stage software investor, so I've had the pleasure of hiring at least a few CFOs at various points in companies. But why don't I stop for a second and hand over to these guys to do a quick background so you can know why they have the standing to be on this panel talking about CFOs.
Good to look up there and see what it says about me. Now, am I live and working for those reasons? Yes. Okay.
Button, your screen, and you go.
Good now?
There you go.
Good now. All right. I'm John Foster from Steel. I'm with here at Palo Alto. I've been in the Silicon Valley for the last 16 years, CFO of a series of venture-backed companies. I'm currently working for two venture-backed companies at the same time, something I haven't done before, but a lot of people around here do. Two earlier stage companies, working half-time for each of them. I've done a lot in the software area. I'm also working on a biotech company. It's good to see all of you. Look forward to the conversation.
Hi, my name is Andy Schmines. I'm born and raised here in Palo Alto. And you can tell the Silicon Valley sort of generational shift. My father worked for 37 years in a building right next door in Varian. Other than a couple years in New York City, I spent my entire career here and never been in a job for more than 3.5 years. One of the things that's nice about being a finance guy, you can jump around lots of different industries. I've done a lot of software, I did medical devices, and I particularly went here because it's online gaming company, which is something that.
So I wanted to start maybe at the basics. So a lot of people, when they hear CFO, they think a guy with one of those little green desk lamps and those HP printing calculator things sitting beside them, and kind of the public company, the boring, stable guy. Can you give us, start with you, can you give a little rundown of, break that myth, show what a startup CFO would actually look like?
It's an interesting question because there are different people who fill that role and fill it in different ways. And so there, to me, is not a cookie cutter. This is a early stage CFO. It means different things in different places. Here's what I think of in terms of a CFO and also when you need to hire. We all know that by the time you're going to go public, you need a CFO. But that's a ways down the way, and many folks won't get there. Often companies hire a CFO after, say, a Series B financing when they are really in a revenue growth phase. But the question is for earlier stage companies, to your point, is what does a CFO do? And if I'm an early stage company, I'm not going to hire one now, but what does he or she do that is relevant to me as an earlier stage company? And how can I get it without having to hire a full-time CFO, which I'm not going to do as an early stage company? So if you think of the classic, and this is my mind, the classic CFO thing that people think about is getting a monthly reporting done and the accounting and the financial planning and analysis. That is certainly part of it, and the buck does stop with the CFO. The CFO is responsible for making sure that is all done correctly. But a lot of that, particularly for an early stage company, day-to-day accounting, it's not being done by a CFO, it's being done by an accounting manager, part-time accounting manager, outsourced, maybe even a bigger controller. So to me, the CFO is a business partner to the CEO and is often sort of an honest broker about business decisions in the company. The CFO is certainly thinking strategically about financing. Why are we raising money now? How are we deploying money? What is the return on investment? Where is this taking it? The CFO, whether a full-time CFO in a later stage company or a part-time person earlier on or whatever, should be helping think about those questions. And then another point in my mind, and I want to hear Andy's thoughts on it, is the CFO often is overseeing all of the G&A functions, general administrative, media finance, legal, and HR. Most CFOs I know don't particularly want to be the day-to-day HR person. But the reality is, again, just making sure things are being done correctly. When an employee is let go, are we doing it correctly so we're not going to get sued later? Is our stock option plan the right one? And so on and so forth. The CFO is hopefully helping in all of those areas.
I think you touched upon one point that's super important for this audience. I mean, the right CFO is someone who is your sort of trusted second guy, because he's the CEO has a very lonely job. I mean, you make all the real hard decisions. You have friends who work for you and with you that have competing interests and competing needs within your organization. You are ultimately where the buck stops. The CFO is the only person in the organization who actually has purview over the entire organization. actually sit back and go, you know, this person has told us the same thing 3 times and he's been wrong. Maybe it's time to listen to that person. So it's a very important role for you, but also to John's point, you don't need it right away. I mean, in some level, your CFO is wasted on your early days. So one of the questions we talked about prior to this was sort of, when do you hire a CFO? That's a great question. I don't really know the answer to that. You certainly don't need it early. You don't need it for the bookkeeping. Hire an accounting manager, hire an outsourced
How about
bookkeeper.
once you've raised more than 25 million?
It's really a complexity thing. So you can raise 25 million and still be a really simple business. So like in the medical device world, you can raise 50, 60 million and you're still just doing R&D, and there's no CFO needed. It really isn't necessary. Flip side is if you're a gaming company where the money's coming in from 12 different sources, you don't really know where it's coming, or anything that adds to the complexity is really when you really want to start thinking about it. And you don't want to do it too early because it's a waste and you won't get a good one because they'll be bored to death. But you don't want to do it too late because there's nothing worse than showing up and all the complexity has already been hardened into clay. And your job is to go, well, wait a second, the right answer might have been left, but we've already hardened everything into clay.
So if I were sitting in the audience today, one of the people who just tweeted here, and I thought, okay, I don't want a CFO today. What's my Band-Aid solution till I get to the complexity you're describing? What do people in the Valley do, and how should I think about that?
There's a lot of ways to do it. You can go a long way with a controller.
What is a controller?
A controller is someone who will do your books. Your accounting will get done. You'll have a budget. You'll have budget versus actual. They'll be able to tell you where the dollars are being spent. Where you'll find an indication you're done with your controller is when they have 15 of detail on your T&E spending, but only 1 line per revenue. And when you're busy going, what's going on with my business? What happened last month? And they can tell you exactly where the T&E went, but they really don't know where the revenue came from. That's a real distinction.
T&E is
travel and entertainment expenses. Yeah, okay. A controller can keep the books, but helping you understand the business is the real difference. You can go a long way with control. You can do part-time role when you're doing 2 different ones, right? That's feasible. One of the things that kind of scared me, and I joined Roblox about 6 months ago, so I had the fortune of talking to a ton of people to see what's going on.
Can you just also give people a little sense of the scale when you joined, just so that what is the complexity that you entered? How's that?
So
what you can talk about, I guess.
In my history, and Roblox is no different, I tend to show up sort of B, C, D public. I've joined a public company. So it's later. It's usually right when complexity is blowing up all around you. You're a little inevitably I'm going like, oh God, I could only been here 6 months earlier, it'd be different. But it's north of 50 people, but short of 300. It's revenue, pre-revenue really. There's not as much for the CFO really. I don't know value. Can I ask the question?
Yep.
I would definitely agree. I think pre-revenue, you definitely don't need a CFO. Even early revenue, you probably don't. But I love the idea, just now that particularly now that I'm working with earlier stage companies and having been in later stage companies, and to some extent, I think CFOs inevitably come in, as you say, 6 months too late and always have to clean up things from the past.
If you guys would make decisions to go to companies earlier, is this relevant?
So trying to identify someone who can help in those areas earlier on. To your point, you can go I completely agree. You can go a long way with a controller. The controller is ultimately the accounting expert of making sure the accounting gets done. There are some controllers that's pretty much all they do, and that's fine. And then there's some controllers just by dint of experience and everything else can help in some of these other areas and be strategic. And so it really does depend on the person. So where else can you get some of this expertise to help in these more strategic areas, potentially from board members, to the extent they have the bandwidth and interest to do so, potentially from outside.
We don't look at numbers.
Potentially sometimes on some of these issues, not so much the finance issues, but some of the, let's say for example, you're negotiating a finance, whether it's still at the C level or the early venture level, outside counsel. sometimes can be very helpful. Again, it depends on the outside counsel. Sometimes they're really focused just on the legal nuts and bolts. But if they have a lot of experience, they can talk to you about the terms and so on and so forth. It can be one of your seed investors, advisors, and so on and so forth. You always have to think about where the person's coming from, what their knowledge and experience is, and whether they have, if they are an investor in your company, they may have their own biases and motivations. So there are other sources to get it from.
If you guys look up, this ties back to your earlier comment, which is the CFO is not about the bookkeeping. It's about the business pieces that you'll miss if you're not paying attention.
Yeah, and I'm hopelessly biased, but I spend all of my time during the interview process trying to figure out what you guys are trying to hire. And as soon as I get a hint that you're looking for a glorified bookkeeper, I move on, because it's not the right role. And if you just need a bookkeeper, go get a controller, give them a finance title, and see if they can grow into something better. There really is a huge variety of what a CFO job can be, and on the other side of the table, on our side.
Is this something you should buy as a service, or then you don't have the person
You're dead spot on, and that's a great lever, if you will. Once the business model is too complex for whoever you have, that might be a trigger to think I need a CFO. CFO is someone who's going to show up and go, wow, I've got a 4-tab spreadsheet and only 3 lines on revenue. And they realize right away, this is not what you need. What you want is 8 tabs figuring out where the revenue is coming from, and a few little lines figuring out the expenses. Forecasting expenses is not hard. It's pretty simple. As soon as it gets to the point where you're not getting the support you need in understanding where the revenue is and where the growth is going to come, and they don't have the answers, but at the end of the day, they can help you frame the questions. That's a great indicator that you might need somebody else.
And I'd add to that, in my experience, I've seen some controllers who are very good at that, and some who just aren't. And you can immediately, without being an expert yourself, you can just tell. If any controller will say, yes, I can do that thing, but you can tell pretty easily, without being an expert, if they're really struggling. And for some, it's just not their core competency. Other controllers can do it quite well.
That makes me chuckle. One of the stories I tell. Every interview between a CEO and a potential CFO, I guarantee you, has had the exchange where the CEO says, I want a business partner. And the CFO goes, well, great, because I'm a business partner. I mean, and it means nothing, because at the end of the day, not every CFO wants one. I mean, it's just funny you bring that up, you're absolutely right. Some controllers will get it and they'll carry you along.
What's the magic question?
Don't tell me what you want. What are you suffering from right now? If they're suffering because the budget isn't getting done, I know I've got a problem, because that's just not a hard exercise. That's a discipline exercise. It's not an intellectual challenge. If they're suffering because they don't know where growth's coming from, then all of a sudden it gets real.
Just from your business should be pretty simple. And I would say the lens that we look at your model from, you're going to tell us you're going to do 100 million in 5 years, sure, whatever. But what we're really going to look at is, what does the next 2 years look like? How realistic is your burn? And then what are you telling us about your business by how your model is? You're telling us it's direct. You're telling us you need to spend a lot of money on things other than people. That's the pieces that we're looking at. So you need to spend your time concentrating on those buckets, not on how to give me a spreadsheet that's 8 pages deep that shows 100 million in 5 years, because it's hard to grab through. You had a question.
Just a question about earlier days when you fractional CFOs, fractional HR, fractional people, and sort of a concept of having like all of you get everything else. Non-engineering, non-marketing, non-stuff, they're responsible for everything else, and the trade-offs, whether or not that's the role we're talking about here, is that the CFO title?
Right. So I'll comment on that a bit. Interesting, both of the companies I'm working for now are exactly that scenario. They're both revenue-generating companies, but still small, and they both of them very much needed anything else. And that's big, but it's not a full-time role, and so that's the role I'm doing. I can do their finance, but also handle all the other things or oversee them in about half time. And for example, one of the companies uses TriNet, they outsource the whole, but outsourcing the HR does not truly outsource. I mean, you still got to make decisions. TriNet, you got to tell TriNet what to do, for example. So I think that the model, I could, for both of them. And then I'm going to be flexible when we go need to meet with VCs, and that model has actually So the question being, when do you bring on an auditor, or when do you have an annual audit done? I think for most CEOs the answer is as late as I can possibly get.
By the way, all of your venture term sheets will say in them that you have to do audits. And so what you do is it goes in there, and then you get together in the first meeting and you waive that year's audit, and then the next year you waive that year's audit. So, so don't overly stress over that, I guess is the answer.
So it's sort of similar to root canal. And what I'd say is the reality is by the time you are generating substantial, so the first audit is always the hardest. So I'm going to raise another point related to that, though, that I was going to find a way to get in here somehow or other, which was however you do it, trying to do your accounting correctly from the beginning is helpful to us folks when we get in, so we don't have to spend a ton of time cleaning up other stuff. And I think, I'd love to say, from literally the beginning, doing your accounting correctly is nice. Who's in our cash account on what's going to cause pain for you later on? And when I say that if you're a software company, software revenue recognition, and yes, it's irritating to have to defer revenue and all that kind of stuff, but just when they look at you blankly, probably not the right way to go.
Okay, this side, who we got? Aha.
Advice around managing board expectations that you have to have CFO and pressure about the CPA. You're not going to be able to do finance without a CFO. I kind of feel the same at a certain level you do, but at this point, part-time CFO and you control it is enough. But managing that expectation, I guess, is important.
Well, isn't necessarily things will go a long way towards that, but wait, these guys actually have their impact. And the later stage correlates with being larger, correlates with not only more things that go wrong, but it's easier to hide things. So I've had the joy of being in a company exactly 3 days, and by the third day I've talked to the outside counsel saying there actually is no business here, and they've never been audited, and a very prominent VC firm had no idea that they had that going on. So once it gets
don't point at me when you say
that. Wow. So yeah, once you get bigger, the board pressure is going to be kind of relentless, and maybe we should be.
So we have a couple minutes left, I assume. What would you say is someone who's going to raise a Series B? Talk a little bit about the process of raising money. Is it good to have hype? Is it good to have traction? Is it good to have revenue? Is it good to have superstars? How do you walk someone through that process?
I think all of those are good things. Yes, yes, and yes.
You need to go raise.
But the key is to get your sort of spiel down, and the CFO has a complementary spiel, whether it's the same spiel or complementary, but as long as you guys go in knowing what you're gonna say, you can get it.
So let me comment on this whole fundraising thing. If you are an entrepreneur who sold your last company for $1 billion to whoever, the VCs are falling over themselves to invest in your next company. So for those of you who that is the intelligent going in a little sooner with more customer traction, I think the second. You're going to talk to a lot of prospective investors to find, you have to kiss a lot of frogs to find your prince, because your particular company model, sector, whatever, may not be what this firm is particularly focused on. So you need to, realize that if 10 guys say no to you and the 11th says yes, that can be okay. And there are many companies that have been very successful based on just that approach.
I think that's a great point. I think the thing that I tell my CEOs when they go fundraising is you're looking for you need to align not only with the VC strategy, so what they want to invest in. You have to figure out whether they did an investment 3 weeks ago, so they're not motivated. People are doing 1 to 3 investments a year or something. So you have to line up with timing, you have to line up with where their fund is and how much cash they have in their fund, whether they just had a big distribution and they all want to go on summer vacation. So it's not just as easy as saying, oh, he does enterprise 30 meetings. No, it's okay.
We want to hear it.
Okay, so these are good with the CMOs primarily that we're talking about. And I guess I'm wondering, when you're in Canada, there's obviously it's a different, regulatory regime and whatnot. And I'm wondering how, the Canadian differences from the US.
Yeah, I don't want to presume to know that much about it, but I can say that conceptually I don't see a difference.
I've done 3 Canadian, which is the stage board members kind of look.
Yeah.
The company has hired, I know, had a part-time guy for a while. We've hired. I think all of the messaging here is very, very similar. The only piece you'll have, which I think would be interesting, is the pool is different. You're not going to go find a guy like him who's been at 6 startups. So you're going to be having to pull the diamond. You're going to have to find somebody who views, and I think the criteria you want to figure out is this person able to think about growth? So I think you need to find a CFO that either has experience in growth or startups or some analogous thing, which makes you convinced that, like maybe they worked at a big media company, but they lived there through growth, so that they can understand the metrics associated with that. That's the That's a
good point. I mean, and if you find yourself with a different pool of potential hires, maybe you lean to a controller for a longer period of time. I think that's kind of the way it might go.
And just